Welcome back to another episode of Adventures in Machine Learning. I'm one of your hosts, Michael Burke, and I do data engineering and machine learning at Databricks. I'm not joined by my co-host once again. He just doesn't like this episode, and so he decided to not show up. Of course, I'm joking. He's on an offsite for his software team, and unfortunately can't make it. But today we're speaking with Hikari. He studied computer science at Harvard, and upon graduation founded QuickHelp, an IT services and consulting firm. QuickHelp was acquired by Yup.com, and Hikari joined and quickly became the head of growth. But currently, he works as founder and CEO of Omniki, an AI-driven marketing asset development firm. So, Hikari, starting with the most important question we'll talk about all day: how did being a D1 fencer prepare you for the world of tech?
Thank you. It's really exciting to be here, Michael. Thank you so much. Just as a quick correction, QuickHelp was an education application. So it was an ed tech company that was acquired by Yup.com. And yeah, Omniki generates personalized marketing assets at scale.
Wait,
and so
let me redo that.
Okay.
Interesting. Got it. We must have the name must have shifted. Okay, cool. That's the beauty of having all this edited. An education ed tech firm?
No, it's an ed tech. It's an ed tech company. It was personalized learning application.
Cool.
And yeah, that's actually kind of where I learned the value of personalization and the importance of personalization. And
yeah, okay, awesome. Yeah. That makes a lot more sense. Cool. So quick note for editor, we'll do that same intro and then start it off with the Hikari introduction. Cool. Hikari studied computer science at Harvard and upon graduation founded QuickHelp, an ed tech company providing personalized learning. QuickHelp was acquired by Yup.com, and Hikari joined and quickly became the head of growth. But currently he works as founder and CEO of Omniki, an AI-driven marketing asset development firm. So Hikari, how did being a D1 fencer prepare you for the world of tech?
Gosh, I think there's definitely a high percentage of competitive athletes being entrepreneurs, and I think there's that famous quote which is starting a company, it's like staring at the abyss and eating glass, and you need to have a high pain threshold, and I think being a competitive athlete kind of trains you for that. I mean, I distinctly remember at Harvard waking up at first of all pulling an all-nighter to finish a problem set, and then immediately after that going running across the winter the Charles River in the Boston winter, waking up at 4 a.m. and then doing these relay races where we push these like 200-pound sleds across like the Harvard stadium gym, and like literally puking after practice, and then going straight from there to my morning classes, and then having practice twice a day, and in that continuing for a couple of years in college. And so yeah, like that ability to push yourself and be surprised by that you have it in you to push yourself further than you thought imaginable, and also the ability to kind of eat pain, I think is a pretty critical and valuable skill also to have as an entrepreneur. And so, yeah, that would be my answer, is just, the ability, the pain, being a competitive athlete increases your pain threshold, which then helps you be a better entrepreneur.
That's so interesting. What pain do you face that is similar to that physical type of pain? I guess it's mental pain as well, like waking up at 4 a.m. But what do you face in your professional life that is equivalent?
It's the physical pain and the mental pain and the stress and the high pressure environments. I think it's all mental at the end of the day, right? Like at the end of the day, when you're completely gassed and you're pushing this sled, or you're trying to do these hang cleans, but you're like completely disorientated and sleep deprived, and your body is literally just falling apart, and you're like, no, mentally block it and just keep going. In some ways, being an entrepreneur, there's so many things happening, and there's so much incoming problems like, coming your way and just mentally blocking some things, and, definitely emotionally, definitely like emotionally like compartmentalizing it, or definitely even emotionally feeling some of those concerns and feelings, but also just pushing through it. And there's just, I think, the emotional pain or the physical pain, they're all mental at the end of the day. And so just the ability to kind of withstand that, I think is, I don't know, for me at least, it seems to come from a similar part of the brain.
Got it. Do you look to hire athletes over non-athletes?
No, I don't necessarily look to hire athletes or non-athletes. We're looking to hire the best people, yeah, and I wouldn't say that like it's true for every single role, but I think just generally being like the CEO of a company, and a founder, I think just having a high pain threshold and tolerance is pretty important to have. And so, and again, you can also develop that through other ways too. Like it doesn't have to be necessarily through sports, but yeah, like. And I think just also being very goal oriented and just being focused on a goal and over a long time frame, because it's the only way you can really achieve excellence. Liking competition, I think business is competition, even though you try to avoid competition, you try to find these blue ocean spaces where there's less competition, but there is competition still, and you got to kind of thrive in competition and almost seek it and enjoy that process. There's the importance of performing during high pressure environments, whether it's a investor pitch meeting or customer sales call, or an important recruiting call, or just an important event during for the team to rally around. That's also true in athletics too. You got a big game and you need to perform, and the team is counting on you, and you gotta you gotta perform. And so yeah, just thriving in high pressure environments also, I think, is something that athletics and sports help prepare you for.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. I played sports my whole life, and I use so many lessons that I learned through sports like daily. Even right now, I don't know what I'm doing right now that I learned from sports, but I'm sure there's some component. And yeah, it's a really interesting playground to practice these types of skills, like being tenacious, having a high pain tolerance, being goal oriented. All of that makes a lot of sense.
And teamwork too. I think that's the other key
That
thing,
great
is how to
point.
build
Well, fencing
great teams.
is individual, no?
It is individual sport, but we compete as a team against other colleges, and so and actually like your scores and points be added up, and so therefore like you are only as good as the weakest player in your squad, because if somebody else gives up a lot of points, then everybody else could be great, but like that could really hold you back. And so this idea that you're only as good as the weakest link in some ways, and that everybody has to step up and everybody has to play their part and everyone has to perform with excellence, I think is also true for startups too. You're operating within a really small team, and everybody does really have to be 10x, and because there's just because you're kind of constrained in terms of resources and people. It's everybody really has to be punching above their weight, and how to craft and motivate high performance teams, I think, is also a big part of sports and startups.
Yeah, that segues beautifully. You've been an entrepreneur for the majority of your career. Why entrepreneurship specifically versus joining a large tech company?
So I grew up in New York, near the IBM headquarters. My grandfather worked at IBM, and he always, he got me to love technology at a very early age, and just get really excited about the exponential rate in which the world changes due to technology. He'd always say that the world changes every 6 months. And so I wanted to be part of that. And I just felt like I would have the biggest impact as an entrepreneur than necessarily, being cog in the machine necessarily. Obviously this is kind of the extreme example, about, the idea of being some engineer that's optimizing, a button color on the third page, something like, that was not as appealing to me as like innovating and inventing new products, and I just felt like I could have more leverage to do that as an entrepreneur than and really build really cool technology and ideally move the world forward through that as an entrepreneur, and kind of the freedom that the entrepreneur provides than being at a big company. And so, that was really more the desire for impact. And I just felt like also I'd move a lot faster in my career if I could just do these things, in the context of a startup. But
Right.
but yeah, I mean, it really comes back down to like the desire to just build great products and have the freedom to do that, and build impactful products, and just the impatience of doing this. And so that's really kind of where the motivation of being an entrepreneur comes.
Got it. So from a motivational perspective, it sounds like it's a great fit. But do you think you're actually, I mean, you've seen great success so far, but do you think that your personality and your skill sets lend well to entrepreneurship style of working? For instance, being a generalist and being proactive.
It's really interesting. Did I become these things because I'm an entrepreneur, or am I an entrepreneur because I'm those things? I mean, I think if I was in a different environment, and I may have been a specialist, and in some ways I am a specialist. It's like a T. You want to be a T shape. So like, you're like an expert in one thing. For me, it'd probably be like AI and AI applications and startups, and and then the T is more broadly related to management and product and marketing well, definitely the T is also in advertising. So the T will be like the intersection of like advertising and AI. And then, more broadly, CEO. You need to be really an expert in basically every single domain of company. So marketing, sales, product, management, operations, finance, fundraising,
Yeah.
etc. So, um,
All right. A
yeah,
question to that end, something that I've been thinking about a lot in my day to day. I have been becoming more senior at Databricks, and now instead of being sort of on the lowest, or not lowest, but like on the hands-on keyboard delivery level, I'm typically either one level above or sometimes even two levels above. So now there's a chain of command of creating the product vision and the solution vision, and then managing people below me who will actually do the implementation. What do you think are the key tenets for ensuring that that chain of command is efficient? Because as you alluded to, as a CEO, you need to be a specialist in everything. Well, you don't have time to be that. So how do you create sort of productive handoffs at each chain to ensure that there's the least amount of knowledge lost and you're actually getting a clear picture of what's going on under the hood?
yeah. Um, Organization, structure, and communication. I think it's about setting very clear. Well, first of all, like a very clear deliverable, and communicating that very clearly. So you could have a vision, but if you cannot communicate that vision effectively, then it's not, your vision is only as effective as your ability to communicate it, and not only to just put it out in words, but really to write it down, to create a doc, to create a structure, so that everyone on your team can be aligned around it, and that everyone knows what they're where they're running towards. I think. And then the second thing is making sure you have systems accountability and creating the structure for accountability, so that not only do your reports know that they're meeting or not meeting expectations, but then there's transparency throughout kind of this chain in terms of what role they fit in, and why what they're doing is important. And it's not just like I don't know what I'm doing and I don't know why I'm doing it, but it fits this larger strategy, and this is why you need. And it's actually motivating when that clarity is provided. And so, setting up systems accountability, communicating a strategy, clearly creating, um, uh, uh, you know, like those would be some of the examples I think of being an effective manager. But honestly, for me as well, it's a learning process that every stage the company is a distinct stage, and you have different layers, and what's needed from a CEO at a 2-person company to an 8-person company to a 40-person company to to an 80% company to 100 plus is different. And so for me, it's a kind of constant learning experience as well.
Got it. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's something I'm still pretty bad at. So I was wondering if there are some tips and tricks. But yeah, I think context aware accountability specifically for the person's role, I think is sometimes underutilized. Like I know that I sometimes overstep bounds or am not as proactive as I should be because I'm not exactly sure what my role is in a given project or even at an organization. And so having really clear delineations of what you shouldn't be doing, you don't have to follow them, but knowing what's expected of you is so helpful in determining what you actually do day to day.
I think it's like being a coach, right, of a sports team,
Yeah.
of a basketball team. That's basically what a manager is that you're setting the strategy and of like, this is the game plan, and this is what we're going to do. But you're also coaching on an individual basis for each player and saying, hey, this is where you need to step up, or this is where you're doing a great job, and celebrating the wins with the team as they happen, and motivating the team, and being part cheerleader, being part strategist, being part mentor and therapist. I mean, I think it's a multivariate. You need a lot of varied skills for being an effective manager. One example, especially in the startup context, that I like to give of being a manager is it's almost like you're in a burning building because things are the classic quote is you're like jumping off a cliff and building the plane on the way down. But so lots of things are going wrong, but also core things are going really right. And your job is not necessarily to fix all the problems. Your job is in that environment to coach somebody to empower them to fix that problem. And so you also need to have a certain calmness of mind and a certain equipoise and a certain authority and a certain clarity of communication to motivate people to be like, okay, so the roof is falling down, but we're gonna solve it by doing this, or and not doing it yourself, because then you're not really managing, but actually coaching somebody to be, okay, now this is how we're going to fix this roof. Even in an environment where there's other maybe there's flooding happening and things like this, but it's and then nurturing talent too. I think that's the other key component is, being an effective coach is it's a role of service. You're in service. You're the lowest person at the company in many ways. You're there to support everyone. And so and to help them in their careers and help them level up in their careers as well. So like creating an environment where people can be the best selves, and also to get work out of people that they didn't think they were capable of doing. So to say, this is good, but I know you can do better, and then having them surprise themselves in terms of what they thought they were capable of doing. And I think this almost ties into back to this idea of athletics and stuff. Is I remember the most the best coaches I've had in sports were people like this, and they were like, wow, like they believed in me more than I believed in myself, and they got me to do things that I didn't think I was capable of doing. And so I think that's another key component of being an effective manager.
Yeah, you've hinted at motivation a few times so far in the episode. How do you motivate people?
I think different people have different motivations, and so you kind of need to understand what is it about somebody about that gets them going, and it's not.
All right, sorry. Let me refine then. Let's say in the last all hands that you had, where you needed to rally the troops, get everybody going. What angles did you take specifically for your organization?
Well, I think you need to paint a vision of why it's worth it, right? And like what's in it, why they want to be part of this journey, and why it's an exciting thing. And you want to paint that vision very clearly, so it's something that people can rally around. like why this is important work. And it's not, people, it's not about the salary or the money necessarily. I mean, people can get paid doing, working, at various companies, but like, why are they choosing to spend their valuable time with you and at OmniKey? And why is it OmniKey's vision and mission so critical and important? And why is it worth their time to, work really hard to achieve this? And so I think it's just really framing like the why, and then after you frame the why, then again really communicating everyone's role in how we get there as well. So like, every role is important. The other example I like to give that was I studied Latin in high school and middle school, and my favorite quote is from the Aeneid, and it goes for summit hike, olim meminisse juabit, and it's Aeneas is, his crew is shipwrecked in Carthage, and he's lost like 2/3 of his crew, and he goes in front of whatever's remaining and says, "Yes, this sucks, but perhaps one day, like, it'll be worth it. We'll look back at this moment and in a moment of joy." The exact quote is, "Perhaps we'll look back at this moment in a moment of joy." And like, maybe in the future we'll be in a happier environment. We'll all be having dinner and having a fun time, and we'll look back and say, "Wasn't that so crazy? Wasn't that so tough? Could you imagine that we survived that and we persevered through that moment?" Because startups are hard, and it does require a lot of excellent work from a lot of people, and people really pushing themselves. And it is important to have context to say that this is, part of the journey, and also that things will get better, and that this place that we're trying to go to achieve this is worth it. And when we get there, we're going to look back at this moment and say, this was a great, it sucked, but it was also part of the experience, and it was a great experience to have. And so just having that, like, also provide that long-term context as well. It's my favorite quote, just in general in life, I think. But because it just says, this too shall pass, kind of like.
Yeah, and it's not even this too shall pass. It's like this will become a fond memory. And
this will become a fond memory. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like, we will look back at this and be like, wasn't that so like crazy? But like, not, I don't know, because time also like makes things feel less, I don't know. Exactly. Yeah. We'll look back at this in a moment of joy. This will be a fond memory. Like, that was so crazy when somebody so and so woke up at 4 a.m. to fix this thing because it was falling apart, and it was like really shitty and really stressful during the moment, and but that wasn't that so crazy that happened.
Yeah, I think about that a lot, actually, because I like to journal. And so if I reread a journal, it's funny how my current perception of the memory is different from the actual experience a day out of what that experience is. And like staying up late for studying, like I remember the startup that I did right out of school, that was absolute hell. It was so stressful. I was way in over my head. I was trying to do everything, working crazy hours. And looking back, I was like, good times. But in the moment, I was like, I want to shoot myself. So it's an interesting paradigm. Lots of philosophical implications on that. But yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
I mean, there's, what was it? And I would nowhere like compare this to like these, but one of my favorite writers is like Man's Search for Meaning, right? And like, there is a thing of like, how do you get through hard times? But you have to be realistic that it is a hard time. And it's not being delusional. It's not being overly depressive. It's being realistic of the situation. And so I think being like, this does suck. And yes, we understand this sucks. But like, we will get through this, or things like this. Also, it's important to be realistic, but like, and empathize at the realistic level with your team as well.
Yeah. So doing a 180, talking about things that don't suck. Gen AI, it's the hottest thing. It's so fancy and cool and solves everybody's problems. Can you sort of explain at a high level how you guys use Gen AI at OmniKey?
Yeah, so we're the first mover in generative AI advertising. So the company was founded back in 2018. I studied computer science, the focus on AI at Harvard, and I was taking a lot of AI coursework at MIT. And my dad's an artist, and so the initial impetus behind OmniKey was really this passion, or even the initial impetus and passion behind generative AI is this idea of generative art, which I found incredibly compelling and just really exciting. And so the way we utilize AI and generative AI is several things, and it really comes down to three things. We help brands manage their brand. We fine-tune a model on the brand. We help generate scaled marketing assets. So we use that brand model to generate copy, ideas, and imagery and video that reflect that brand and is aligned with that brand. And then we have an analytics platform. So customers can keep track of their brand, and even as they're scaling this content, they can see which pieces of content is performing, and not only which pieces of content is performing, but why it's performing ideally. And that's hard, but using computer vision and multimodal AI and reasoning AI to get trends about certain pieces of content are doing well with certain audiences because it contains these creative features, for example. And so brand management, scaled creative generation, and analytics, those are the areas that we utilize AI.
Got it. That's interesting. It seems like a very hot area, so I think you guys are super well positioned. I literally this week I scoped 3 separate calls that for customers that look to build those exact same systems with Databricks. Like for Databricks, we have the analytics pretty solved. You have to write some SQL, but it's good to go. My question to you first is, how do you think about fine tuning against brand assets? Like, what does that process look like? How do you get high quality assets? Do you do it for different product verticals or over the entire org? Like, what's that process?
Yeah, so there's two ways that we fine tune today. One way is fine tuning an LLM based on the brand voice. So getting corpus of historical content that is in the voice of the brand, so that as we're generating copy, that it's reflective of the personality of that brand, the way they talk, their universe of kind of like symbols and references they have. Fine-tuning on brand voice. And the second way we fine-tune is fine-tuning product photos. So when we're generating an image, we're generating an image of a product photo oftentimes in different settings. And to do this, you need to fine-tune the image model, and the image generation model, and the diffusion model on that product, so that it is as accurate reflection of the product with as few distortions as possible. And so that's how we fine-tune the diffusion-based image generation model and the large language model.
Got it. Any tips? So a lot of the people that listen to this podcast are highly technical. They're ML practitioners. That's a big chunk of the demographic. Do you have any tips for approaching these fine tuning processes? Like, obviously, collect good data, run your stuff correctly, write good code. But beyond that, specifically for the brand awareness component.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to have a process for providing feedback, and so we from the customer, because even when we're fine tuning, we have the customer, we may be generating things that is not actually reflective of that brand, or we may be mistaken or not have a complete understanding of what their brand is. And so we have an approval dashboard where customers can provide feedback on the generations. And so it's the creative director, the marketing director that can provide feedback to our generative models and say, this is good, this is not on brand. And we actually have rules and guidelines regarding in our brand management section regarding like copy you can't use, words you can't use, imagery you can't use, and really making sure that the generations and fine-tuning process is controlled, and it's controlled in the direction of the marketing director and brand director and the creative director in terms of what they're seeking. Because the ideal magical moment is the AI generates copy and generates imagery, and the brand manager goes, this is exactly what makes my company my company. This is completely on point. And to get to that point, it does require some feedback process. And so really making sure that that feedback from whoever's managing that brand is having that structure in place, I think is very important.
What percent of the time does the initial guidelines provided by the customer align with the end result? And the motivation for that is like, what percent of the time do you have to show them the art of the possible and have them say, oh, I like this, I don't like this, versus them knowing what they want from the outset?
What percentage? I'm not sure if I can give an exact percentage, but I think it's more very, very often the case that the first time you're not generating something that is on brand, and it does require some back and forth, and yeah, like a price, like high percentage, because the brand. I mean, I think this is really an interesting thing about LLMs and AI with brands in general is that it brings these things to life, right? So a brand used to be a really static thing. It was like a one pager with like some rules, like this is brand. It's very like limited actually. Like there's not a lot of information. Brand book, a couple pages. But then what an LLM does is it brings that brand to life. It now has personality. Now it's like a person. You can have a conversation. It's there's more vectors of like freedom that this brand now has. And when if it's, for example, you're building a customer's chatbot, for example, for the brand, right? Like there's many ways that conversation can go. And so now these brand guidelines have to be a lot more richer and has to be a lot more thorough, and they actually need a lot more data. And so helping brands evolve from this very static world of brands where it was just like, this is a couple pages of what makes a brand and these some basic rules, to now I'm bringing my brand to life with this LLM. It's a real person, or as real as it can be, engaging with consumers on a personal level. And this is the richness of the personality that I'm trying to create. And so yeah, you do need a lot more information for this vision of a brand than kind of the way brands historically operated.
That's fascinating. I've absolutely love the analogy of bringing it to life, because you're right. You have this sort of two-dimensional like bullet list almost of like, this is what we stand for, but often a lot of the human like subjectivity I feel like needs to be interpreted, and you read between the lines of those bullets. Well, with an LLM, you can actually see it, you can actually feel it, it can actually act upon those items. Do you ever go back and try to enrich that brand description with the LLM?
Yeah, so we so the feedback that the customer provides based on the outputs that we provide to them then is updated to the brand model. So we get a more holistic and clear, like every single piece of feedback that the customer provides through our approval dashboard gets updates to the base model. And so then we do get a more thorough understanding of the brand, and the brand information becomes more extensive. And in some ways that is a unique form of data for us to build a business and a moat around, is that as the customer invests more time into providing and training our model to reflect them, that is a high switching cost for them to then do the same kind of effort of training some other, maybe there's another competitor that doesn't have that ability, but it just, that investment of data and time that we get through that is then becomes benefits just the fact we can generate more relevant content for them. So yes, always looking to enrich more data about what makes that brand unique.
Got it. Do you ever look to influence? Sorry, go ahead.
And I think the other component is that like it is an existing problem that brand managers have today, which is that especially if you have a brand operating in many different regions or languages, like the brand sometimes takes its unique personality and character depending on that region or location based on whatever local marketing team decides is that brand. But that's not sometimes it's contrary to the actual brand values, and it results in an inconsistent brand experience depending on the region or even the platform or the person who's seeing that content. And so brands want to are seeking to create more consistency in terms of their brand and their what makes their brand them. And so this technology is also an exciting opportunity for them because it lets them create a better way of creating consistency across all the different agencies they may be working with, or all different regions they may be operating under, or the different languages they may be, or different cultures. That even maybe as you're personalizing your brand to the cultural context of that locality, it still hasn't lost the essence of what makes that brand that brand.
Right. I could see how that would be a massive issue because McDonald's in one country is quite different from McDonald's in another country.
Yeah,
So
it is. Yeah, exactly. Like one country it's a high end thing, and a low end other country but like that you want to create that consistency, right?
right.
So because because if people are traveling, then it's like it's
Yeah.
distinct experience, and so and even if it is distinct, at least you want to have control over it and be aware that that is something that's happening. And, yeah.
Right. So this is a really great point of there's sort of a objective definition of what makes a good fine-tuned model for an entire organization. So let's say McDonald's in Japan might be very different from South Africa, might be very different from Texas. How do you guys steer the customer's opinion of their own brand? Are they always right, or do you try to sort of guide them into a specific type of brand model? How much like thumb on the scale do you have in terms of influencing what the brand outcome is?
Well, the customer is always right when it comes to the brand. I mean, that's for them to decide. Yeah, like we're yeah, like our tool is to help them scale their brand experiences. So help their brand connect with more people and on a personalized level. But what makes we're not here to tell you that you should be this person instead of that other person. I mean, that's their decision. That said, we provide a lot of data in terms of what types of content is resonating, and what kind of messaging is resonating, and what kind of value props are resonating in different platforms and campaigns and audiences, and so that can provide feedback to the brand manager in terms of making decisions regarding which characteristics of their brand they want to focus on. But yeah, we're only here to provide data and empower them to scale their their brand. So yeah, they're always right. The customer's always right.
Got it. Okay, cool. What are some high-level trends that you're seeing in the advertising industry that Gen AI is influencing?
I mean, gosh, I would say like all the generative content, generative imagery, generative video to
Are
some extent.
copywriters out of a job?
Yeah, copywriting. I mean, it's interesting. There's that famous. There's what we like to say is like, you're not going to be replaced by AI. You're going to be replaced with somebody using AI, and so the copywriters are not out of job. Copywriters who can really harness AI probably have more work, who can do it well, probably have more work and more getting paid better and doing a better job than they've ever been. And not only that, but also companies that are harnessing AI properly have probably more work and more scale and better margins than they ever had. So it's so yeah, I don't. So I wouldn't say the copywriters out of work. I would say the best copywriters who can use to harness this technology have more work than ever. The companies that can, in the best copywriting companies or the best company agencies, who can utilize this technology have more work than ever. And I think there was actually some research done, or I think I saw some research which was that like there's more people working in marketing agencies today post ChatGPT than pre ChatGPT, because now they're just way more productive. And when someone's productive, then there's more demand for their work. And so, yeah, like I think the other component being is that I think when something is data driven, then you can measure, and we can measure the outcomes, then it warrants a higher ROI, it warrants a higher investment. So whereas copywriting used to be highly not quantifiable and not as potentially as results driven, when you can quantify every element, then now you quickly differentiate who the best copywriters are from who aren't the best copywriters. Then and the people who are the best can say they're the best, they can get paid more, and they can get more work. And so I think it's actually created more work as for the best copywriters.
Interesting. Do you think generative AI has a place in creative breakthroughs? And the preface for this is, when I was interning at Tubi, I spoke to I just asked around, tried to get on people's calendars, looked to chat with smart people just to learn what tech was all about. And I chatted with the director of ML, and he said data is really great for making iterative improvements, but you still need humans to make those 0 to 1 leaps, because by definition, there was no precedent for that 0 to 1 leap. It can't be data driven. So do you think generative AI can have that human creativity component where it could make these wild new pieces of content, or do something that is fundamentally quote unquote human?
Yeah, I definitely think it can, and I've always felt like it can. In fact, when even starting this company, before starting this company, I felt like AI can be creative. And this is really what got me excited about the technology, is that seeing AI being creative. And the one specific example I have to give here is, and this is what it got me really, almost, was when AlphaGo beat Lee Sedol and in this Go championships back in 2017. That's really what this is 2017, 2018. I started companies. This is like, oh my god, AI is really at the precipice of doing something crazy, good. What Lee Sedol said when he was playing AlphaGo was that the AlphaGo was creative, that it was making moves that were unimaginable to a human, but were brilliant and had, almost unexplainable, but like something that a human wouldn't do. It wasn't just mimicking a human; it was innovating, creating new opportunities, and seeing the game in a unique and novel way. And that's how ultimately how he lost was, or he won like one game, but like lost many of the games because the AI was, what we define as being creative, and creative being, thinking of something novel, combining different themes and inputs and data to create something new, and making moves that had never been done before, but were working and were effective. And so I think AI can be creative, maybe not creative in the sense of strictly defined, no, but I actually do think, I do genuinely think AI can be creative, and AI will continue to be more and more creative. Because also, like, what is creativity but the ability to create something new based on combining many different influences and data inputs? And that's basically what an AI does. Is they go through, they sponge up as much information as possible, and then they come up with something new, a novel combination of those inputs. And that's what human creativity is too. When you kind of combine two different ideas and you create something new, and it's something that AI can do, and it's something humans can do. And but I think the key component to mention here, though, is this framing of AI versus human, because I'm not sure if that's necessarily the right framing for this technology. I think it's actually very limiting when you say, the goal of AI is to replace all human labor, or it's going to replace all human labor, because I think AI can be more than that. And if you just put the cap of AI value to, or definitely more different than that, and if you put the value of, if you just commoditize human labor, that isn't going to be necessarily maximizing value creation, right? Because there is a certain cap to all of human labor value. What I think is that AI is very good at doing things that humans can't do, and it will create value, infinite value, in novel ways that humans couldn't even do, right? Like potentially innovating, discovering new drugs, or coming up with interesting stories that potentially would not be intuitive to a person. So I think we should be pushing AI to do things that humans can't do, and that in areas that will increase value kind of in a certain infinite vector, than just being like, let's just commoditize, the existing vector of all human labor.
Yeah, that definitely tracks. And if you just look at history, look at prior innovations, all of these things augment. They're not
Yeah.
replacements. And yes, they do replace what people are currently doing or were doing in history, but they then serve to augment future use cases. So if you think about the car, all right, now you don't have to run everywhere. Now you don't have to ride your horse. You can actually get there faster. And now people can do a lot more things, be a lot more productive. And
Yeah, I mean,
I
gosh,
completely agree.
the idea that there'll be a job called digital marketer, right? I mean, that's
Yeah.
like, yeah, 20 years ago, like you'd be like, you got to be joking, right? Or what,
Yeah.
or the idea that there's a performance marketer, or even the car creating the job of the car mechanic. So like, there's always going to be a role for entrepreneurs to come up with new jobs, and come up with new ways of creating value based on underutilized resources. And I'm confident in the creativity of humanity and human and entrepreneurs, to come up with novel ways of creating additional value, and they will create businesses based on the digital marketing jobs of the future, or like the unimaginable things, that they will recognize things in this paradigm shift as we move from into potentially an AI-centric AI world. There'll be new opportunities for humans, and they will create new jobs and new companies based on those opportunities and those just new kinds of problems that arise. And so, because there's always going to be problems in the world, and there's always going to be problems in business. There's always going to be problems, and not all problems can be solved by whatever the state of AI is today. And so, as long as there's problems, and as long as people want to seek solving problems, there'll be new companies and jobs and opportunities. And so, I think this is just a continuation of kind of the capitalism and innovation, and we're going to continue, accelerating through this trend, and it's not going to be the end of. It almost is a very static, stasis-driven view of the world when you say, "Oh, it's." Like, I have more belief in humanity and human creativity than that. Yeah.
And just evolution and like adaptation. It would be kind of dumb to think that we would be just like, all right, I don't have a job.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll go file for unemployment. Like,
well, also, like, I think it's like the humans will be like, oh, I have everything I want. I don't want anything more now.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I think
we're greedy.
Humanity. Yeah, exactly. Humans always want more things. Humans always get used to the current thing, and then they want more things, and they want new things. And as long as, and I think this is biologically true, is humans always are, they always want, the way dopamine works is we always seek novelty. We're always seeking new things and new ways of making our lives better, new goals. As long as, humans continue to be dopamine driven and want new things, and there's going to be entrepreneurs who come up with ways of meeting that new need. And so, and then as long as businesses also, and businesses are there to meet those needs, and not all problems in business are going to be solved. And as long as there are problems in business, there's going to be potential new problems that this technology creates, which I think we all agree that this technology is going to create new problems. There will be new companies formed to solve those problems. And so, the idea that like progress ends, or history ends, or like we just now all just become completely complacent people with no new desires, and businesses just stop innovating and trying new things. I don't think that's realistic.
Yeah, I completely agree. But people are going to complain for a little bit. Like, people will be displaced.
Yeah, I mean, Luddites, there's this a good book. It was called like The Blood in the Machine, about, the original Luddism, and, like, the factory workers going and breaking up these textile mills because it's like, oh, the robot's going to take everyone's job. And so the idea of automatons, or kind of human-like machines, replacing humans, it's actually like an ancient concept. I think the first word of automata is like prehistoric, and the idea of like some kind of an inanimate object or non-human taking over human work. And so, like this fear that humanity will be replaced by by an automata is truly, I think, an ancient fear. But yeah, as long as, yeah, but as as long as we live in, as long as humans continue being humans, we live in a capitalist system that's always growing. We focus on growth. Then I think that, I think the system is structured to create new opportunities based on entrepreneurial and human creativity.
Yeah, I completely agree. And speaking of those opportunities, what are the opportunities you're looking to create with OmniKey in the next 2 to 3 years? What's the tech that you're looking to invest in and build?
Yeah, so I think in the next 2 to 3 years, AI agents, I think are a big thing.
What are the, just out of curiosity, and reveal however much you can, but what are the agent stacks that you guys currently use?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, right? Because there's agents in the context of like what agents could be, and then there's agents in the sense of like what agents are marketed as today. Agents today are kind of these, it's almost like just kind of like a robotic. You try to automate some kind of process, and in that process is essentially being automated by a quote unquote agent, and maybe that process is a very discrete task, and that's so potentially it's coding, potentially it's research, potentially it's some kind of chore that you have to do related to scheduling or emails, or and that can be described as an agent, even though an agent, really, the idea of an agent is it has some form of agency and it has some form of like goal-oriented behavior and it's creative. That kind of agent, which almost I think is kind of synonymous in some ways with like AGI, or kind of this idea of like of an AI being reflective of being able to give it an amorphous goal that can achieve that goal, is kind of what in some ways what makes it makes it more human-like. That I think is a bit, maybe a year or two in the future, or 2 or 3 years in the future, but I think we will get there, because just the amount of innovation and work and resources and investment happening going into, the entire stack is such that I'd be surprised if, we don't achieve that. And so, in terms of like, so I just named a couple of use cases of like agent-like tools that we're utilizing, but I think it can be a lot more than that, and I think it will be a lot more than that.
Got it. Okay, so in the next few years, you said agents. What else?
Yeah, so all forms of, so digital content creation, right? Digital content being including code, including video, movies, games, right? All that's going to be AI driven, and we're going to see we're going to see more funner games and funner apps, and it's probably going to make that digital world more hits driven in some ways. I think the lifespan of a successful application will kind of shrink because
Whoa, really? That's so cool.
Yeah, because it's going to commoditize in some ways the ability to create those things. You used to have a lot of resources to say build a compelling application, but now anyone can do it, and so that will increase competition, which will mean generally, time frame that these hits exist will be shorter, just because competition will reduce that and that kind of lifespan. It'll in some ways turn it more like the music business, right? The music business today is very brand centric, but the actual lifespan of, say, a hit song is fairly competitive and limited, and so similarly, I think you'll have big brands that continue to innovate and create compelling new digital experiences and applications and movies and shows, and people will be drawn to brands because humans psychologically, there's that thing, right? There's 160 people, like the Dunbar's number, like humans, can only have 160 people in their brain, really, in terms of managing relationships. And a brand is really that, right? A brand is just being one of those 160 people. So if a brand can manage to be one of those 160 people, then they're you're more likely to get business because people trust you, they're more likely to come to you for services than somebody that they literally do not trust and is not part of their mental village. And so, yeah, the rise of brands, the importance of brands, therefore, in that kind of world, it becomes even more paramount because that's really the thing that competitively differentiates you from. The power of brands is more important when something is commoditized. And so as software and these things become more commoditized, the brands become more important. Just innovative new drug discovery and simulations to propel that. So today, I think we're still the amount of resources I think that could really be dedicated to creating simulations to discover new drugs is still very limited, and can be done significantly at a higher level. Just like there's, it's today very difficult to simulate the entire human body in a machine and kind of simulate all those different permutations where say a drug interaction with a human. It requires a lot of computational power. But as compute, becomes, advances and then, doing those kinds of simulations will become easier, and then you will have a real, I think, blossoming of innovations related to drugs that help humans live longer, live healthier, live happier, live more productively, and so I think you'll see in some ways an evolution of human life through that. And then self-driving cars. I think I think that will be probably hopefully widespread in 2 to 3 years. I think part of that is based on regulation, but I think the technology is getting there. I'm in San Francisco, and I probably see more self-driving cars than I see ride sharing, and so. I think, and then things are kind of unimaginable too. But those are some of the things in the next 2 to 3 years.
Got it. Your point about brand importance increasing is really fascinating, and that makes a really nice market niche for OmniKey. If you can increase brand value and put that into the 160 people category, that's an insane step for anybody. And you guys it sounds like are betting a lot on brands becoming more important, right?
Yeah, I think, I think brand, as the competition for attention becomes fiercer, the value of brands will become more important, because when you have 10 equivalent pieces of content that are equally interesting, which one are you going to look at? You're going to look at the one that of the brand that you recognize or trust. And so because people do like familiar things, and so I think, especially as the digital economy really turns even more competitive due to AI, I think at least digitally, the value of brands become more important.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Okay, cool. We're coming up on time, so I will quickly summarize. We kicked it off with a sports discussion. TLDR, enroll your kids in Little League. But if you're looking to learn some soft skills, sports provides a great analogy for that, and sort of a safe environment to learn how to be tenacious, how to have goals, those types of things. In the startup space, your job isn't to fix everything typically as a leader. Instead, you should delegate fixing things and empower people to do this. But you also must ensure that the people that you're empowering enjoy what they're doing and you're nurturing them. It's important to retain your talent. And the best leaders make people believe in themselves even more than they thought was possible. Then with that, on the motivation side, it's important to clearly paint a vision of why the work is important, and then also make sure people feel that they have a role and that they are needed within that role. On fine tuning, it seems like a human in the loop specifically for brand content generation is super, super important. And it's typically an iterative process. It's hard to know from the outset exactly what you want, and showing the user what they could potentially have is a great way to sort of take it in a stepwise approach. And then for the advertising industry trends, Gen AI is definitely going to be a huge driver. And then it's going to be increasingly data driven. And finally, brands are going to become more and more important. So, Hikari, if people want to learn more about you or Omniki, where should they go?
Yeah. Follow me on X at HISENJU or at Omniki, OMNEKY. Follow us on Facebook and Meta at Omniki and on LinkedIn at Omniki or follow me personally on LinkedIn at Hikari Senju. If you want to sign up for a demo and see and try out the platform, you can sign up at www.omniki.com. And if you want to send me a note, my email is hi@omniki.com. So feel free to also send me a note as well. And yeah, really excited to speak with you all and just have you at least as part of the journey.
Yeah. And I'm sure a lot of our listeners will have some really great use cases, especially in like B2B and B2C types of platforms. So awesome. Also, the fact that your email is hi@omniki, that's pretty badass.
Yeah. I mean, it
is your name, but still.
Initially started off as a support email, and then I just made it my own email. So yeah, it was like because initially I was doing all the support and stuff. Yeah, and then it was like, okay, well, I'm just spending all my time on this email, so I'm just gonna make this my email. But you can all actually like Hikari@omniki.com also redirects to my email. So
nice. Cool. Well, this was a lot of fun. Thank you for joining, Hikari. And until next time, it's been Michael Burke, and have a good day, everyone.
Thank you, Michael.